The much anticipated arrival of the hit Netflix series The Crown, its latest season, has been followed by a lot of discussion and debate. This latest season portrays, among other scenes, the arrival of Lady Diana. The series certainly can be accused of over-dramatization and perhaps the taking of excessive artistic liberties, but the basic storyline of Diana and Charles's failed marriage conforms to the well-documented true series of events. There were 3 of us in this marriage, Diana famously told the BBC in 1995, so it was a bit crowded. With this tragic story replaying as it is on the television, I find myself drawn to this week's story of a crowded marriage, the story of Jacob and his crowded marriage, particularly to the character of Leah, whose misfortune seems similar to that of the royal princess, stuck in a marriage to a man who does not love her. Not only does Jacob not love Leah, he barely notices her. Jacob arrives at Laban's town, and almost immediately from his arrival, the first thing we start hearing is Rachel. Rachel, 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 Leah's younger sister. Jacob falls in love with her at first sight. She is Yifat Toar v'Yifat Mareh. She's shapely and beautiful, the Torah says. What does it say about Leah in the Torah? It says she has weak eyes, whatever that means. And Jacob pays her no attention at all. The way the story unfolds next is well known. Jacob works for Laban for the right to marry Rachel. The 7 years that he serves in order to win her hand seemed but a few days because of his love for her. But Laban deceives him, and Jacob ends up married to Leah, whom he does not love and does not want. After arguing with Laban over being tricked, Jacob agrees to work for another 7 years so that he can be with his true love, so that he can be with Rachel. Imagine Leah's predicament. Imagine Leah's humiliation. She is older. She is less physically attractive than her sister. While Rachel presumably has lots of suitors, lots of options, Leah remains alone, with no sense that this situation is likely to end happily, no sense that the situation is likely to end soon. One commentary famously says that her weak eyes, where did they come from? From crying all the time. It is not clear, by the way, that Laban had bad intentions in deceiving Jacob. In the Torah he says, it's just the custom around here that the older daughter goes first. Could also have been motivated, as other commentators suggest, by his love for his daughter Leah, maybe a sense of responsibility that he felt towards her. Didn't want her to end up with anybody less than this wonderful guy who walked into his home, Jacob. And you could even accuse Leah of manipulating the scene, but even she did not necessarily have bad intentions. She may have thought that one day Jacob might learn to love her. But on the morning after her wedding, Leah's husband Jacob has only one response when he discovers that she, rather than her sister, is his wife. Ma zot asita li, he says to Laban, what is this that you have done to me? Jacob is angry. He's disappointed. What a honeymoon. Poor Jacob, but poor Leah. Undesired, unvalued, unappreciated. The Torah does not make any secret of Jacob's preference for Rachel, even after they are married. The text is very straightforward. Vaye'ehav gam et Rachel mileah. Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah. Period. But then something happens which changes the story. God sees that Leah is unloved and blesses her with children, while he withholds that blessing from Rachel, who cannot conceive. Leah actually has several children in succession, and her pain is referenced in each of their names. Her firstborn is Reuven, because the Lord has seen Ra'ah, my affliction. It also means, now my husband will love me. Ye'ehevani, Reuven. By naming her son Reuven, it's almost like Leah says, maybe now that I've given him a son, my husband will finally love me. But he does not. So Leah tries again. She has a second son. She names him Shimon. This is because the Lord, Shama, heard that I was unloved and has given me this one also. Well, maybe God heard, but Jacob doesn't hear. Nothing changes. Leah has a third son and names him Levi, declaring, this time my husband will Yelaveh, will be attached to me. For now I've borne him 3 sons. One of my teachers, Rabbi Shai-Hel, notices something really interesting in this name. He says the first 2 children, Leah wanted love. By the third, she's ready to settle for attachment. But Jacob does not love her, not after 1, not after 2, not after 3 sons, does not become attached to her. This poor woman, forsaken and forlorn, we almost want to cry for her. When Leah's 4th son is born, we again expect an expression of her sadness and her desolation. Another name expressing her wish that her husband would finally care for her. But actually, something else entirely occurs. The Torah says, Vatahar od, vateled ben. Leah conceives again, and she bears a son. Vatomer, and she says, Hapa'am odeh et Hashem. This time I will praise God. Al-ken karashmo Yehuda. And therefore she called his name Yehuda, which means thankfulness. What has happened here? How does a woman mired in such deep misery, languishing in such excruciating loneliness, how does she suddenly do an about-face and express gratitude rather than longing? Well, in that name, Yehuda, I think we find the great lesson of Leah. Leah, by the time her 4th son comes along, has somehow found the courage to accept that her life is not going to turn out as she had hoped. She has spent years aching for the love of her husband, repeatedly convincing herself that perhaps it's just around the corner. But as she grows older, and as the years go by, she begins to see that this constant yearning will only serve to hurt her over and over and over again with repeated disappointments. Something inside of her shifts, and rather than sinking in the sorrow of what she does not have, she learns to embrace the beauty and the fullness of what she does have. She is the mother of 4 beautiful children, and they will one day themselves become patriarchs to an entire nation. Vatomer Leah, and so she says, Hapa'am odeh et Hashem. This time I will just be grateful. Leah's gratitude obviously doesn't set everything right. It doesn't banish every other feeling that she has. We all know that's not how gratitude works. Her disappointments are real. Her pain is deep. She will never have the kind of love or the kind of marriage that she hoped for, and I wouldn't want to minimize that. But with the birth of Yehuda, Leah has discovered a capacity to feel grateful even amidst her sorrow. This idea is not some modern interpretation on the story. It's actually picked up in the Talmud in a fascinating statement of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in Tractate Brachot. He says, Leah was the first person in the history of the world to feel gratitude and express gratitude to God. Now, if you know the Torah, you know that that doesn't seem right. Leah was the first person in the history of the world to express gratitude to God. According to the Psalms, even Adam expressed gratitude to God, the first human, for how wondrously he was made. So what is Rabbi Shimon talking about? Well, he teaches us, I think, something really important, something maybe particularly relevant to the situation in which we find ourselves today. And that is that it is one thing to be grateful when everything is wonderful. It's one thing to be grateful when all of our dreams have been fulfilled. It's one thing to be grateful when all of our hungers have been sated, when all of our thirsts have been quenched. But it is quite another to be grateful when life sucks. It is quite another to be grateful when life is complicated. When some of our most cherished dreams have remained painfully unrealized. When some of our yearnings are so intense that you could almost feel them burning inside of you. That's why Rabbi Shimon said, Leah was the first person to feel and express real gratitude to God. Because true gratitude can only come amidst sorrow, amidst disappointment. One more lesson. The Jewish people are called Yehudim. We're not called Reuven. We're not called Shimon. We're not called Levi. We're called Yehudim, whose name means, again, I will praise. I will be thankful. I will express gratitude. Perhaps our very name isn't meant to refer to Judah, but to the woman who actually coined that name. Not Judah, Leah. Who is a Jew? It is one who discovers the possibility of gratitude, even amidst heartbreak. It is one who can find her way to gratitude without having everything she wants or everything she needs. You know that the word disappointment may be the perfect word to describe the past few months. But Judaism does not ask us to choose between disappointment and gratitude. Through Leah, we learn that everyone's life pretty much has to have and does have some of both, disappointment and gratitude. It is Leah who reminds us to make space in our lives for the complex, for the contradictions, for the inconsistencies of what it means to be human, and to find peace therein. So let me conclude with a beautiful poem of Maya Angelou, who I think speaks so eloquently to this very theme. The ship of my life may or may not be sailing on calm and amiable seas. The challenging days of my existence may or may not be bright and promising. Stormy or sunny days, glorious or lonely nights, I maintain an attitude of gratitude. If I insist on being pessimistic, there is always tomorrow. Today, I am blessed. Shabbat Shalom.